Hello and welcome to this week's Midweek Devotional from University United Methodist Church. We're so glad that you decided to join us today. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is LeBoeuf. I'm the youth director here at University United Methodist Church. For those of you who don't know what a Midweek Devotional is and this is your first time, well, welcome. We're so glad you decided to join us today. And so just a little bit about this. It's kind of a time for us throughout the week to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the text for the upcoming week or the past week and kind of just share life and get into this habit, this new rhythm, so to speak, of walking with Jesus throughout the week and not just on Sunday mornings. And so if this is your second, third, fourth, fifth time joining us, well, welcome back. We're so glad that you're here, and we're especially glad for those of you who are joining us for the first time. So for those of you who don't know, currently we've been in a short summer series, back to school series even, called Reset. And this idea of resetting our priorities on what God is asking us to. In the past 2 weeks, we've heard from our senior pastor, Reverend Katie McKay Simpson, talk a little bit about resetting and finding out what is our why as people, what gets us out of bed in the morning, what motivates us to live into our purpose, a higher purpose. And then what is our why as a church? How do all of our purposes fit into what God is calling us to do? And so this week coming up actually is LSU Sunday, where we're going to hear an amazing word from Dr. Bob Mann, an LSU professor. And so I just know that he is going to give us a great word. It's going to be great. And so I'm actually going to talk about the passage a little bit to kind of talk almost as an in-between between connecting Reset to Bob Mann's message in a sense. And so today, if you have your Bible, I encourage you to open it up to Hebrews chapter 12, verses 18 through 29. So I'm not going to read all the way down, but I'm going to read a short snippet of it. And so verse 18, "You have not come to a mountain that can be touched and that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to a trumpet blast or such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word be spoken to them. Because they could not bear what was commanded, if even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned. The sight was so terrifying that Moses said, 'I am trembling with fear.' But you have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, the city of the living God. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly. To the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven, you have come to God, the judge of all men, to the spirits of righteous men made perfect. To Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel." So we kind of see two parallels here. We see in that first section this idea of a lot of doom and gloom and storm and darkness and all these things, and even to the point that God was, quote unquote, so angry with us that even if you touch the mountain, it must be stoned. So this idea that there's this huge chasm between us and God, so much so that Moses was trembling with fear. And then we see Mount Zion, where it's talking about the city of the living God, a joyful assembly. God's the judge of all men, but yet Jesus gives us the new covenant. So this is clearly a direct compare and contrast, if you will, between the old covenant and then the new, now that Jesus has died on the cross for us. And I kind of want to talk about resetting how we view God in a sense. So for those of you similar to me, I think a lot of times we can look at God as the first passage. We're trembling with fear, almost as if we look at God as if he is Zeus, just waiting to strike us down for doing wrong things. But then we see here that there's this difference now that Jesus is here, that it's actually a God who wants to be with us and connect with us, and allow us to be joining in the joyful assembly. So kind of my challenge for us, and especially me, as I've been kind of working through some things in my personal life of working, I've started to kind of ask questions of who do I think that God is, and how do I relate to God? And so I kind of want to challenge us to do a short exercise to maybe reset our vision, reset our priorities on who do we think that God is in comparison to us. So this week, I challenge you to look at some important relationships in your life. Maybe your parents, your grandparents, maybe it's a mentor, a spiritual figure, someone that you trust, and kind of write out some characteristics about that relationship. For me, my dad was always working in the oil field, so he was always gone a lot. Obviously doing what he had to do to take care of us, but there's this disconnect there between sometimes I feel as if God is distant and doesn't necessarily care about my everyday life, just because me watching how other people react to me, it's kind of one of the ways that we internally, subconsciously view who God is. So I encourage us to take that time. And a lot of these beliefs about who God is evidence between our relationships, between how we've seen other people interact in the world, and then we kind of make up our minds of this is who God is, and then that's it. And then that's the lens from which we look at the Bible. So I want to encourage us to take the time to write out what are these relationships in that sense. And it'll be interesting to see what the actual truth to these unhealthy beliefs are. And so we're so glad that you joined us. We would love to hear any feedback in the chat as you're doing this work. I know it's a more intimate exercise that I'm asking us to do, but if there's something you come across that you kind of notice from this and feel like sharing down below, I want to encourage you to go ahead and do that. And so thank you all for joining us this week. We look forward to having you come back next week, same time, same place. Thanks.